Robert Weinstein, aka Crypto Damus, is also known by his alias. He has over 20 years experience in astrology and is one of the leading financial astrologers for cryptocurrency markets. He published the first financial astrology for Bitcoin article in the Mountain Astrologer and has appeared on the Astrology Podcast and has lectured at ESAR 2022 and NORWAC in 2024. Robert has the longest running financial astrology subscription service for crypto markets since 2018. You can find out more on his website at astrocryptoreport.com, his YouTube channel at the Cryptodamus Astrology channel, Twitter at AstroCryptoGuru, also known as X, and a Patreon account, patreon.com cryptodamus1. And Robert uses the Porphyry house system. And with that, I invite you to take it away, Robert.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here, and I love talking about financial astrology. So I'm super excited to be invited here by Kepler College. And I've been doing astrology for about 25 years. I'm also an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor, and I've specialized in medical astrology as well. But I really got interested in financial astrology in 2017, 2018, and really started tracking cryptocurrency markets and started an astrology project on Bitcoin to see if we could use astrology to sort of track Bitcoin market trend. It was, we had some amazing results. We also had some big failures, especially at the beginning, but I've been working and refining my techniques over the years. And I think that astrology, can provide some really unique and helpful practical insights for understanding like market behavior. We can't always predict the price, although sometimes we can. I was able to predict this year, the June 6th, a top out, an important top for Bitcoin and crypto markets in June, and was also able to predict a very long and difficult summer period for crypto as well. So sometimes we can predict it, but astrology often offers just some unique insights into understanding market behavior and price action. But today, Kepler, the people at Kepler really invited me to just do a very sort of basic intro for financial astrology, just to talk about the planets and the signs and talk about their associations a little bit, the financial associations. I mean, we know that astrology is so profound, it's so deep. There's so many different layers and levels of symbolisms and associations and archetypal fields, right? So of course, we know, for example, Aries, in medical astrology, can represent, the head. But in financial astrology, Aries is a sort of a confidence sign, right, in financial astrology. So we're going to just look at the associations of the planets and make connections and see how it all works together. Let me see. I'm going to try to go. Just give me 1 second here. We're going to go to my slideshow. And just bear with me for a second here. So we're going to start just talking about the planets here. Sorry, let me get my slideshow ready. I thought it was, yeah. Okay, we're going to play from the start. So this is part of I have a course actually on my website, Introduction to Financial Astrology. It's got 6 of these PowerPoints. It's got 15 hours of tutorial instruction videos as well. So this coursework here is from my basic course on astrology, financial astrology. And it's got a lot of information, and we're not going to go through all of it. But we're going to really look at the planets, the financial, really we're going to focus in on the financial associations. But, in studying the planets, right, I'm sure we've got a lot of different levels. We've probably got beginners to advanced here in the seminar today. Of course, it's always important to denote the dignity and debility of planets by exaltation and by domicile and detriment and fall. And that is going to tell us a lot, about the meanings of the planets and the sign associations, especially in financial astrology. Demetra George talks a lot about how when a planet has, especially if it's in domicile, it has access to resources, right? So that has obviously financial applications. And one of the things that interests, there's a lot of different kinds of astrology, but for some reason, I tend to be really interested in the practical applications of astrology, like medical and financial. And I also like financial astrology because there's a sort of a mathematical, quantitative part of it that you don't always get in a lot of different systems of astrology. But just talking about the signs in domicile, and also, of course, in exaltation, the planet is held in very high esteem. And it's, sort of has the backing of the community. So these are just interesting concepts, of course. And when a planet's in detriment, it doesn't have access to resources. So these are just interesting sort of, these are just interesting things to know when we're just talking about the planets. But let's just start with the sun, of course. The sun is the center of the solar system, and all the planets, are held in the orbit of the sun. So the sun is, of course, one of the main, things in astrology. It's a giant fireball in the sky, and it represents in the natal chart, our sort of our identity structure and our life purpose and our hero's journey. Of course, we know the glyph for the sun. In financial markets, just in financial in general, we're talking about confidence. I think the sun and Mars, just sort of generally speaking, really relate to confidence. So if the sun, or Mars is weakened, then that could, is in a suboptimal sign where its confidence is weak, and that can have market implications. The sun is a big, shiny, sort of golden object, right? So it is somewhat related to gold. And so and to some degree Leo is too, because of the rulership connection. Of course, in financial astrology, the sun is also related to the solar power industry, right? Sometimes it's just very literal like that. And the sun also relates to like the head of the company, the CEO. So, when the sun is in Aries, that could be, maybe more positive for markets in some ways. Of course, there's going to be other factors like transits and so forth like that. But if we're just talking about markets, recently we had the sun, was eclipsed on October 2nd. It was in detriment in Libra, and it was eclipsed, right? And it was like afflicted to the south node, which we'll talk about later. And we did see a sell-off there for a couple of days, especially in the cryptocurrency markets, right? So the confidence of the sun was really damaged, by being eclipsed in detriment and afflicted to the south node. It's like what we call multiple of testimonies. So there was a market pullback there, and then that would also show up in a natal chart if a sun was in detriment or fall, and also square opposing Saturn or conjunct the south node. That might indicate that a sort of like that there could be problems around confidence. But confidence is important to the markets when we're talking about financial astrology. Okay, so the moon, of course, the moon, right? What is the moon? What is the significance of the moon just in astrology in general, right? I like my courses to be somewhat interactive. I don't like to just lecture at you. So in the chat box, if you want to say, hey, this is what I think the moon represents, we can get a conversation going. But I think the seminar is a little too big today to really get it to be interactive. It's just hundreds of people. But, the moon is very emotional, right? Especially when we know like full moons. We know that emotions can kind of be running high on full moons. So that's true for markets too. Like the moon is a very important short-term market mood indicator. Let me see if I can move this box a little bit better here so you can see my information. But short-term market mood, when I'm doing my weekly sort of market forecast, we always look at the moon. Is the moon going to be conjunct Venus this week? Is the moon going to be conjunct Jupiter? Those would be favorable usually. Or is the moon going to be conjunct the malefics Mars or Saturn? That might mean there could be a little bit of fear in the market. There could be a pullback. So this really short-term emotional sentiment. The moon, is a shiny silver object in the sky, and it rules silver. So all of the planets have metal associations too. The moon also, of course, rules like homes, land, and real estate, right? The home is a really strong signification of the moon. And so in addition to the fourth house and Cancer, which are also associated with the moon, right? These are all the same kind of general archetypal fields. So the moon is one of the indications for real estate markets. Also, like the restaurant businesses and food and agriculture and gardening and so forth like that. Also, the new and the full moon sometimes will be really key pivot points for the market. So we had June 6th, which I talked about earlier. We had that was a very, very important new moon for Bitcoin. And Bitcoin did have a very important, significant top. So rally to a top right around that June 6th new moon. And there was a lot of different significations for that new moon. So we look at the lunations, to look at market trend. And for a long time, we were getting tops on the new moon followed by a sell-off down into the full moons for cryptocurrency markets in particular. Now, that pattern can change. It's not set in stone, and it did ultimately kind of change a bit. But sometimes it will fall into a groove like that. And that can be affected or thrown off by a retrograde period or other factors and transits as well. Eclipses also can be very important, for markets, especially a lunar eclipse. Markets can go to extreme sentiments, either fear and panic sell-offs or kind of FOMO buying rallies. Also, when I'm doing my financial forecast, if there's an important Fed meeting like there was actually in September, or there's an important inflation report, the CPI, the core price index, I always check the moon. Sometimes the moon will tell you how that economic event is going to play out, like a Fed meeting or a jobs report. For example, the last jobs, we had a very important jobs report recently, and it came in stronger than expected. Well, I think actually Venus was trying Saturn that day. So that gave us a strong indication, right? Saturn is jobs, Venus trine, it came in better than expected. So that was a kind of a no-brainer. That was an easy softball hit. But the moon oftentimes will tell you, the moon squaring Saturn on the day the Fed's meeting, that could really indicate the markets aren't going to like what the Fed has to say. So of course, there's a lot of different associations for the moon, but these are the financial ones that we're going to talk about today. So Mercury, of course, what does Mercury represent, right? He's the messenger of the gods. So let's think about what are some of the significations that we know about Mercury. Just general astrology, mundane astrology, natal chart astrology, because those will help us to understand the financial aspect of Mercury, right? So, and also what signs, does Mercury rule? Mercury rules, Gemini and Virgo. Some say it's exalted in Virgo traditionally. Some say the modern, it's exalted in Aquarius. It's the only contested exaltation in astrology. I happen to have Mercury in Aquarius, so I like to go with the modern interpretation of Mercury exalted in Aquarius, of course. But I think both can be true. Maybe it's exalted in both Virgo and Aquarius. Demetra George gave an interesting talk at NORWAC this year, and she said, whole sign houses and regular quadrant houses can both be true. So I think Mercury can be exalted in Virgo and Aquarius, myself personally. But I don't want to get too controversial here. So as we know, Mercury rules, communication, right? And travel. So that's really going to inform its financial. Mercury is really related to mercantile. And that's really just commerce and buying and selling, so it has a strong connection to financial markets and all types of capitalist markets. It's market sentiment based on news events. Of course, it rules information technology. It rules things like FedEx and UPS that transport packages and goods and so forth. Of course, it rules the regular legacy media. It also rules social media. In addition to Gemini specifically, of course, it rules smartphone technology. And we've got Jupiter in Gemini right now. And that's really, I think Apple is coming out with a new AI feature on its smartphone technology. And when Uranus goes into Gemini, I think we're going to see some big, new technologies related to phones. But just talking about Mercury, of course, it rules cars and travel, self-driving cars. when Uranus goes into Gemini, airlines, and all communication sectors. So when Mercury, and markets tend to like it when Mercury is in Gemini or Virgo specifically. And markets, sometimes you'll see an effect on sometimes you'll see a negative effect on markets, in Sagittarius and Pisces when it's debilitated. So the dignity and debilitation can really play out, especially if you get we're going to have in December, I think, no, in November and December, Mercury is going to be debilitated in Sagittarius and it's going to go retrograde and combust. So that's something, double testimony that could it'll be interesting to watch and see how financial markets respond to that. Of course, some of these things I'm talking about also will play out like in the natal charts. But we'll talk about that. Of course, if you have, Mercury in Gemini, for those of you out there, it's a classic sign of someone who's highly intelligent, processes information very quickly, and could be good with technology. So Mercury also, Mercury retrograde oftentimes will make market analysis much more difficult. I'm sort of, I put out a monthly and weekly forecast, and when Mercury is retrograde, you get a lot more fake out moves. You get a lot of fake technical signals. So it's just much more challenging to sort of read the market price action because Mercury retrograde is really a trickster. Also, something I've noticed quite a bit is that when Mercury's retrograde, there's often information that we don't have access to that comes out either just before or just after Mercury goes direct that will oftentimes change the market behavior or trend. So that's something that's really interesting to note as well. All right, moving right along here. Of course, as we said, Mercury rules also air travel, cars and rental car business, and just the automotive sector, as well as the signs. So of course, Venus is an important wealth planet, right? Venus is one of the main wealth planets. Venus really rules all the good things in life. Actually, I like Venus. I like Venus better than Jupiter. Shh, don't tell Jupiter this, but I like Venus better than Jupiter. Well, especially in a night chart. But I think Venus is a bit more reliable than Jupiter. Jupiter's kind of an unreliable ally sometimes. Jupiter overpromises and underdelivers a lot, but Venus is much more reliable. Venus really represents the good things in life: wealth and money and good food and, beautiful, elegant jewelry and art and fine wines and fancy cars and fashion and beautiful clothes, right? And love and sex also to some degree as well, and relationships. And Venus rulership of Taurus is really more associated with money and wealth, right? Taurus is an important wealth sign. And Libra is more associated with love and marriage, but also the art market. So Venus rules copper. Venus also rules the fashion business. In a natal chart, it tells us how we deal with material resources and money, especially if it's in Taurus. That's very favorable. It represents wealth and money and banking and the good things in life. It's where we find comfort, in life. And Venus, brings wealth and money when it's well placed. Those of you might maybe have Venus in the second house. That would be quite favorable. Excuse me, I have just a bit of a very mild sore throat today, so bear with me. When I do, sometimes I do consultations for cryptocurrency traders or stock market traders. And for the month, sometimes we'll look at the important Venus transits that month. If Venus falls into a spot, let's just say you have Jupiter trine the sun. I have Jupiter trine the sun. So if, in air signs, Jupiter's at 5 Libra, my sun's at 8 Aquarius. So if Venus falls between 5 and 8 Gemini, it kind of makes a grand trine in my chart. And that would be a very favorable period for me to add risk when I'm trading the markets. So we can look at the transits of Venus. It can be very short term, obviously, or transits to your natal Venus. If you have, Jupiter just stationed at 21 degrees Gemini for 4 weeks. Let's just say you had Venus at 21 Libra, you would have gotten, that would have been an amazingly lucky period for 3 or 4 weeks. So we look at the transits of and to Venus. For example, Bitcoin natal chart has Venus at 0 degrees, Pisces exalted. The Ethereum Venus is actually debilitated in Virgo, but what's that fixed star that I'm drawing a blank? That fixed star at 0 Virgo now. It used to be at 29. Used to be at 29. Leo, is that Regulus or something like that? So there is that. So that's favorable for Ethereum. Of course, it rules the art market. As we said, it rules Rolex watches and fine food and high fashion and that kind of stuff as well. And it rules beauty, beauty, art, creativity, money, and marriage. So Mars is a tricky planet. And I am going to take some questions at the end of the planetary presentation here before we get into the signs. So Mars, so let's ask ourselves, what does Mars represent in astrology? What are some of the basic significations of Mars in astrology, right? It's the god of war. So how does that relate to financial markets? Well, once again, as we talked about at the beginning, it relates, I believe it relates to market confidence. Of course, it rules the military industrial sector. And Mars, the red planet, was associated with blood spilled in battle. But Mars can also bring, blood to the markets, right? There's that famous saying, like, buy when blood is running in the streets. They don't mean it literally. I think it means when the market, turns red, and there's panic, that's when you can buy. Well, Mars can bring blood in the markets, and we've seen it before. It is a malefic planet. It really cuts both ways. It's tricky. It can bring market confidence, but in the soft aspects, especially when it's favorable. Jupiter and Mars trine, and sextiles are very favorable. We have Mars is about to trine Uranus right now. So Mars is at what, 23 Cancer today. It's in fall, but the markets have been doing quite well anyway. It's approaching a sextile to Uranus at 26 Taurus this week. And my hunch is that's going to be very favorable for market confidence, for especially high tech, which is related to Uranus, and cryptocurrency markets. So we're looking at that this week. Especially Mars in Aries. Mars in Aries is often a quite bullish period for markets. It's one of the best performing Mars sign placements for the S&P 500 and for Bitcoin. Of course, Mars rules guns and gun manufacturers and weapons and the military industrial complex and defense sectors. And it rules, steel and iron and sharp metal weapons and tools. And Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Capricorn is the ultimate sign of the markets and money savvy business, market trading and investing. So that, that the energy and the confidence of Mars does exceptionally well in the ambitious sign of Capricorn, which relates to finance and markets. So actually, Mars has an important role to play for the markets. Courage and confidence, taking risk. If someone has, Mars and Aries trine Jupiter in their natal chart, they're going to be a risk taker, and that could also include financial risks. Mars also, of course, rules Scorpio. Scorpios, we'll talk about that when we get into the sign. Scorpio is a little bit more complicated. Oh, man, that's funny when that happens here. Okay, so wait a minute. Close that, and then let's see if I can get back into my slideshow here. Okay, so Mars, that's the medical stuff. Okay, so here's this is some research by a good friend of mine, Marsilio's Musings is his tag on Twitter X. He's another financial astrologer I work with, and he just coded some programming for the Mars planets and signs. This is for Bitcoin since 2010. So basically, Bitcoin was created in 2009. So pretty much the entire life cycle of Bitcoin. You can see how it's performing I think it's a little bit cut off here, but this is Aries, Taurus, Gemini. Let me see if I can get out of the signs here. So Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, and so forth. But you can see Mars in Aries is the best performing Mars placement by far, for cryptocurrency markets, especially for Bitcoin. Now, Mars in Taurus does pretty well too. I mean, Taurus is the bull, it's bullish. Some of the weaker signs are Mars in Cancer, which is in fall. But actually, this is all about probabilities. Every time is going to be different, and this particular Mars in Cancer has actually been quite good for Bitcoin. It just gives you a sort of a ballpark estimate. Oh man, this keeps happening to me. I apologize. I don't know. It's something about Zoom, how Zoom interfaces with PowerPoint. Okay, so Jupiter, of course, we know is a very important planet for good luck and good fortune and prosperity. And also rules wealth. We know that, why does Jupiter rule wealth and prosperity and abundance and good fortune? Does anybody know sort of why, right? Where did that association come from? So I'm going to let you guys sort of hit the chat box with that for a second. But I would say, it's the largest planet in the sky. It's the brightest star. It's the brightest star in the sky, right? And to the ancients. So it was big. It represented big things, thinking big, big dreams and visions. It represents abundance and expansion and prosperity because it's the brightest light in the sky. Jupiter rules tin, which isn't, that important these days, but it's the greater benefic, especially in a day chart. Abundance, prosperity, confidence, good fortune. It rules international foreign travel, international trade, travel sectors, inflation. Jupiter, we think of about abundance and prosperity and expansion, but Jupiter can also be inflationary. And we saw that actually with Jupiter in Pisces. Dignity wasn't always a good thing. In that case, Pisces isn't very much of a wealth sign. So financial, it is the main wealth planet in astrology. Aspects in natal and from transit Jupiter are very important for profitable trading setups. It rules crude oil, and it's associated with inflationary forces. And now, Jupiter's squaring Saturn all year, and inflation's coming down. So, maybe that square from Saturn isn't such a bad thing. And as we say, it rules international travel along with the sign, Sagittarius. Here's just an example of a Bitcoin price, very important market cycle rally tops over the last decade. If you can see my slide, they all correlated with Jupiter partile trines, sextiles, or conjunctions to the Bitcoin natal chart, to almost to the day, and certainly to the degree. So the November 2013 top, Jupiter was at 19 Cancer. It was trine Bitcoin Uranus at 19 Pisces when that top was made. The infamous December 17th Bitcoin top at $20,000. Jupiter at 13 Scorpio was sextile Bitcoin's natal sun at 13 Capricorn. Okay, pretty much to the week. And then the previous all-time high was in November 2021. Jupiter stationed at 22 Aquarius for 4 weeks. Well, that just so happens to be the Bitcoin natal Neptune at 22 Aquarius. The cycle top we made, this top we made this year was 73.5 for Bitcoin in March. Lo and behold, Jupiter at 2 Gemini was trine Bitcoin's natal Mercury at 2 Aquarius. So that every all-time high of Bitcoin ever made was correlated to Jupiter soft aspect or conjunction. Pretty remarkable. This stuff, you can't make this up. I mean, if this doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what would. This is really a mathematical proof of Jupiter's ability to bring, prosperity and wealth. Saturn, the greater malefic, right? Saturn is a difficult planet, and it's usually oftentimes a bearish sign for markets. But you can make money on that too if you know that Saturn's coming and is unfavorable. That could bring a buying opportunity, or you could cash out and protect your profits before a Saturn transit hits. And oops, sorry. Not sure why we lost that there. Sorry. Okay. Saturn, in the natal chart, Saturn Jupiter trine, that could be a very favorable for success and wealth. Saturn Jupiter squares oppositions could be a little bit more challenging in a natal chart. Could be some blocks around prosperity. So Saturn rules making money through hard work, of course. It does bring challenges and adversity. It does bring limitations, and it can bring scarcity. In financial astrology, Saturn can ask you, how are you gonna, how do you deal with that scarcity? Saturn can bring fear into the financial markets. Here we see in 2018 bear market, we had a series of 3 Saturn conjunctions to Bitcoin Mars, and then a Saturn conjunction to the Bitcoin Sun. And you can see very clearly how the price dipped every time. You see where the arrows circled in blue, those are the 3 conjunctions to Mars. And then the low point in the market came with Saturn conjunct the Bitcoin Sun. And then the market started to move up very quickly after Saturn starts separating from the Bitcoin Sun. Again, Jupiter does what you think it should do, and Saturn also does what you think it should do. And so we can use astrology. Now, this isn't necessarily specific enough for short-term trading, but it did give you a lot of information about the overall trend for cryptocurrencies that year. So Saturn rules lead, right? The heaviest metal. It's a key bearish planet. It often indicates fear or a sell-off. Oh man, this is so glitchy. I'm sorry. If I move that thing at all, then I have to reset the whole slide. Saturn rules pullbacks in the markets. However, I was just saying earlier, Bitcoin, Saturn is actually favorable in the Bitcoin chart for the next 10 weeks. It's in a tight sextile to Bitcoin's natal sun. So this is a great example of Saturn. It's going to station at 13 and 12 degrees of Pisces. It's going to sextile Bitcoin's natal sun at 13 Capricorn. And I don't know if you follow crypto at all, but it's doing quite well right now. So Saturn also rules like government regulations or intervention in the market. Of course, it's deflationary. And it rules like construction and building and infrastructure. Saturn is a key factor in the major market crash alignments, especially the Saturn-Uranus hard aspect cycles. Those are the most important planetary cycles for major financial crisis, is the Saturn-Uranus hard aspects. You look at the major financial crises of the last 25 years, the dot-com bust in the year 2000 was a Saturn-Uranus square. The Great Recession of 2008 was a Saturn-Uranus opposition, and the market wipeout of 2022 was a Saturn-Uranus square. Saturn-Uranus hard aspect cycle, it's like a 45-year cycle. The conjunction isn't as important, although that's the next one. The trines and the sextiles, will get a sextile between Saturn and Uranus next year, and those tend to be good for the market. So yeah, again, Saturn rules wealth through hard work and long-term investment, right? Saturn isn't interested in short-term trading. Okay. So let's keep moving. Saturn, of course, rules construction, boundaries, borders, and hard work. Uranus, just checking the time here. So the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, obviously, these are fundamentally different than the traditional planets because you can't see them. You need modern technology to be able to see them. So they represent more complex circumstances and psychological concepts than the traditional planets do. And they represent more powerful forces on a greater order of magnitude, and the overall technological complexity of the modern world. So Uranus rules, of course, freedom, the planet of freedom. It rules lightning and electricity. And it rules cutting edge new technologies, right? It can bring sudden, dramatic, unexpected market moves, surprises. It can indicate exciting breakouts, and it can also indicate volatility and instability in the market structure, higher volatility, wild price swings. Uranus rules big tech, AI stocks like NVIDIA and Palantir and Microsoft, cutting edge new technologies, which well, Uranus used to represent the radio and the telephone in the early part of the 20th century. Now it represents AI technology, quantum computing, nuclear fusion, and it rules cryptocurrencies. And we've seen Uranus in Taurus has been a revolution, in finance, with cryptocurrencies really becoming a much bigger factor in global financial markets. As we said, the Saturn-Uranus cycle is the most important cycle for boom and bust in the stock and the cryptocurrency markets. A great example of this is the Bitcoin natal chart has a Uranus-Saturn opposition, and it's considered one of the most volatile assets. Let's talk about Neptune real quick here. Just want to make sure we're moving along on our time. Neptune, of course, rules water resources, the oceans, the surfing industry, probably, the blessings of divine grace. Neptune can bring money through like good karma and divine blessing, money that you didn't work for. Neptune is an interesting, it can be a positive factor in markets. It's a faith, also a confidence in the markets, but somewhat different than the sun and Mars. It's almost like it's like part of some divine unfolding plan. Neptune was sextile Bitcoin's natal sun throughout the remarkable rally of 2017, where Bitcoin went from $1,000 to $20,000. Neptune hard aspects can bring confusing circumstances to markets, can also bring delusional price action, where the market just continues to go up even when it doesn't make any sense. And you can get a sort of what did the famous Alan Greenspan said, irrational exuberance. So Neptune can be a bit dangerous. Neptune rules crude oil, water resources, mind-altering drugs. So Neptune rules the cannabis sector. Neptune rules the legalization of psychedelics and the psychedelics being used in medicine today. What was I saying about irrational exuberance? Yeah, Neptune can indicate sort of delusional states in markets. So Neptune in Leo was actually the Roaring 20s. And 1929, about in the middle of 1929, Neptune ingressed into the risk-averse, cautious, and practical conservative sign of Virgo. And you got the crash of 29. Sorry, I have to reset this again. If I move that thing. Okay, last, well, not last, actually, Pluto. Pluto can bring breakdown, death, rebirth, breakdown, destruction, and death, and then rebirth and regeneration and evolution in the markets. But Pluto also rules the underworlds, where the metals and the gems are under the earth. So Pluto can rule gold and silver and precious gems. It rules plutonium. It rules debt. It rules organized crime industries, which is, a business. It rules cartels, insurance, inheritances, right? Money that comes from death is ruled by Pluto. Power and strength, also dramatic breakdowns in market structure. So you cannot make this up. But in 2014, Pluto was conjunct the Bitcoin natal sun at 13 Capricorn. And you got the famous events of the hacking of the Mt. Gox crypto exchange, which almost destroyed Bitcoin. However, a new generation of exchanges rose up out of the ashes, and modern cryptocurrency trading with much more secure platforms and a much wider variety of options was reborn, and ultimately crypto became back bigger and stronger than ever. Well, that is a classic Pluto story. So Pluto is moving into Aquarius on November 19th. That's going to have implications for financial markets and trends such as AI. Pluto went into Aquarius, right, in March of 2023. And man, we haven't stopped hearing about AI since then. I mean, I'm already sick of it, and it barely even started yet. But you're going to be hearing a lot more about AI. You're going to be hearing a lot more about quantum computing, nuclear fusion, and these really self-driving car technologies. In warfare, what's become what huge new factor in warfare is drones. And Aquarius is an air sign that rules new technologies. So this has a lot of implications for a lot of different things. Of course, we also know that Pluto and Aquarius could represent popular uprisings and overthrowing of the political, religious or scientific status quos. So Pluto going into Aquarius is going to be a big shift. I've got a few more slides I want to cover here with the nodes, I think is coming next. Chiron, I'm just going to skip over. The nodes are very important in financial astrology. They're very important in financial astrology. The nodes are interesting. They're some of the most controversial points in astrology, right? The schools don't agree on what the nodes mean. I mean, the evolutionary astrology says one thing, Jungian astrology says another, Vedic says another, Hellenistic says another. But we're just going to touch on them real quick here. I think you can sort of think of the North Node as related to Taurus. It holds on to things. It adds energy. The North Node is very good for money, wealth, success, fame, glory, and material success in the material world. The South Node is not great in financial astrology. It can bring great spiritual blessings. I truly believe the South Node is not bad. But in financial astrology, it takes away wealth. It brings karmic debts. It's negative for financial markets. And also in the natal chart, the South Node conjunct Jupiter or Venus can weaken the worldly material success of those benefits. But it can bring great spiritual blessings. So again, so the North Node is very good for fame, for money and fame in financial astrology. The South Node is not great. But it can also, if you're a buyer looking for a buying opportunity in markets, the South Node actually could bring a great buying opportunity. We're going to have the North Node is going to conjunct Saturn and Neptune pretty soon. So that's going to be interesting. The South Node, that will strengthen Saturn. Demetra George talks about the North Node. It makes benefics more benefic, but it also makes malefics more malefic. So there will bring out, I think it can bring out positive and negative qualities of Saturn in that upcoming one too. So I was just looking at Elon Musk's chart, the richest man in the world. I wanted to point out just some really quick practical things. He's got a partile sextile from Jupiter at 27 Scorpio to Pluto at 27 Virgo, and that's a wealth aspect, right? Pluto rules the underworld, the riches. Jupiter rules prosperity and abundance. This is an aspect of power, fame, influence, wealth, and so forth like that. So that is my presentation on the planets. Let's just take a few questions here before we get into the signs.
Sure. So I encourage everyone to pop your questions into the Q&A box. I saw some good ones in the chat
Just want to make
box,
sure
but
everybody sort of understood, is tracking everything I'm saying. Everything makes sense.
Great. Well, the first question is about your choice of house system. Do you use porphyry because of financial astrology or because of that's how you were trained?
No, my first astrology teacher was Laura Nalbandian, which some of you may know. She's a very famous astrologer, and her family started NORWAC. And I got into astrology in the very late 90s, early 2000s, and used to go into her bookstore, Astrology et al., and study. And her mother's very important in the founding of KeplerCollege, I understand. And she uses porphyry. So that's what I started with, and I've just stuck with it the whole time. It's really the only house system that makes sense to me. I like the quadrant systems. I didn't even know about whole sign houses until about 5 or 6 years ago, right? I'm not a traditional Hellenistic astrologer. I've never really been able to make a transition to whole sign houses. I want the ascendant to be the first house cusp. I want the midheaven to be the 10th house cusp. I just like it nice like that. But I don't like Placidus where the houses are all different sizes. I like how porphyry just divides. The quadrants are just naturally going to be different sizes depending on the latitude and longitude, but I like how the houses are all the same sizes within the quadrant. I just want the quadrants equally divided. I think that's a very nice, elegant solution to the question of the house systems. And so, I honestly, I don't think it matters that much which house system you use. You just pick one and be consistent. And that's really what I've done. I've just used it for 25 years. And so when you get a reading from me, you get porphyry, and that's just the way it is. Every once in a while, I sort of compare what would this look like with whole sign houses? How much would this change? It infuriates me if you get, like an ascendant degree that's very late in the sign, like 27, 28, 29, and then it's still the first house, the entire sign. It just, it's never made any sense to me. But I think they're all true. It's not which one is the right one. They all work. They can all be true. So porphyry is just the one that makes the most sense to me personally.
Great. This next question is about, if I understand it correctly, it's wondering about the moon in Taurus, which is exalted, but what happens if it's, say, on the malevolent fixed star Algol? So I think you did talk a little bit about fixed stars. You referred to Regulus. Do you use
Yeah,
them
I
in
mean, that's
planetary
interesting because,
transits?
of course, Uranus is on Algol right now. So we've been talking a lot about Algol. However, it hasn't been as malefic as it was in July. We had the assassination attempt on Trump, and then Biden stepped down. It's very chaotic, and certainly the Middle East has been very, very violent, and Algol is associated with war and conflict and violence. However, you might notice that Vesta is now trining Uranus and Algol this week. Just throwing that out there. I think it might be mitigating, and also Mars is sextiling it. What does that mean? I mean, yeah, I don't know what that means for wealth. Algol is obviously a very difficult star. I mean, it's considered by some the most malefic fixed star, but other people say it has positive indications for like feminism and standing up and fighting against the tyranny of the patriarchy. So yeah, I'm not an expert in the fixed stars, but yeah, that's an interesting. The same thing with Venus. Venus has domicile in Taurus, but at 26 degrees, it certainly would be affected by Algol to some degree.
Great. And Michael asks, how would you define planets combust and their impact on financial astrology?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a tendency for when planets go into maximum combustion that the markets can sometimes sell off, if we're talking about the financial markets. And then when they go cazimi, which I define as just under 1 degree, that seems to work for practical purposes. The markets will rebound and you'll get a rally, and then they'll kind of dump again or flatten out when it goes back into the combust again. So certainly we've seen that. If a planet has dignity through exaltation or domicile, it can be somewhat protected from combustion. If it's debilitated in combust, then it's more problematic, I think. So there's lots of factors. Is it mitigated by an angle from a benefic? Is it worsened by a hard aspect from a malefic? But yeah, combustion is real. Mercury combusts. I've seen Bitcoin sell off many times, especially if it's like debilitated in Pisces and combust. Sometimes you'll get a sharper sell-off. But Cazimis usually are quite favorable. The previous one was Mercury Cazimi conjunct the South Node. I don't know if you remember that one. Just happened in Libra, and the cryptocurrency markets did not like that one on the South Node. Totally like nullified the Cazimi effect. So There's always a lot of different factors to consider, but combust is the data and the research we've done is that it's generally speaking an unfavorable for markets, and the markets will sell off. In a natal chart, yeah, if Jupiter's combust, that has implications. If Venus is combust, that has implications for its ability to generate wealth and prosperity. But again, there could be many other factors. So just that alone wouldn't necessarily be enough to say.
Great. The
Let's
next
take one
question.
more question.
One more? Okay, we have one more. Speaking of Mars, Trudy asks, what is your forecast for markets when it retrogrades later this
Uh,
year?
yeah, that's a good question. I haven't, I have to go back over the research. I couldn't speak to that off the top of my head. I have to look at the research for that. I mean, I like Mars in Leo. I mean, Mars in Leo is like hot, fiery. Leo's a sign of gambling, speculation, and risk. So Mars in Leo to me speaks of, good for markets just generally. I mean, one thing we're looking at here, where I'm researching my 2025 forecast. I mean, Mercury goes retrograde on what, November 23rd or something? And then Mars goes retrograde on December 6th or 7th. Mars stays retrograde till February 23rd. Then Venus goes retrograde on March 1st till April 14th. So between November 23rd and April 14th, we've got back-to-back Mercury, Mars, Venus, Mercury retrogrades. So it's the question isn't really what is the forecast for Mars retrograde. It's like, holy crap, we've got an incredibly extended period with a back-to-back Mars and Venus retrograde. I mean, I just think 2025 is going to start off in very difficult waters, and it's going to be very hard. I think it's, that just doesn't sound that great for markets, especially Venus is going to be debilitated in Aries and combust and retrograde, and then it will go into exaltation, and Pisces might be better, but there's a lot of retrogradation between late November and mid-April. So it's a bigger picture than just Mars retrograde. Very complex, I think. All right, let's go
And
to
do you
sorry?
Sure. I was just going to ask one additional question about
Sure.
retrogrades. Do you tend to see pullbacks with them or decreases? Or is it more nuanced than that?
Yeah, with which planet and what sign and what are the aspects and yeah. I mean, yeah, I think Mercury retrograde, let's just say Mercury retrograde. I've done significant research on Mercury retrograde's effect on Bitcoin price action. It's 100% non-directional. Bitcoin can go up, down, or flat. So Mercury retrograde doesn't tell you anything about direction. But what it does tell you is about the price action becomes more difficult to analyze. You'll get more fake out moves, and you think it's going to be breaking out on a bullish rally, and then all of a sudden it sharp pulls back. You think it's dumping and it's going to crash, and then boom, it rallies back. There's a lot more of this trickster type of thing. Also, you'll get glitches and breakdowns on the exchange and hacking events on cryptocurrency exchanges during Mercury retrograde. You'll get whipsaw price action around the station retrograde and the station direct. So it's not like, is the market going to go up or is it going to go down? It's like there's all these other things that will happen during a Mercury retrograde period. So now it can oftentimes, Venus retrograde is associated with major directional market trend reversals. Okay. But so if a market's been in a very, very strong bullish trend up, Venus retrograde will sometimes indicate a very sharp correction pullback down. But also like the 2008 financial crash, the stock market was down for 2 years in a row. Well, the reversal rally, the trend reversal back up into the 10-year bull market started during a Venus retrograde. So Venus retrograde isn't always bad. Sometimes it will bring a trend reversal to the upside. If a market's been trending down for 2 years, a Venus retrograde can bring a reversal to the upside and a new bull market trend can begin. All right, let's go to the signs. We're going to have to go a little faster on the signs. These are the things you need to really understand about the signs. And I think we're going to said that Kepler, I'm going to send them my slides so you can ask KeplerCollege to get a copy of these slides. we talk about the elements, we talk about the cardinal fixed immutables. Got to understand the glyphs. So Aries is the god of war, and conflict and competition also, which markets is a very competitive place. And Aries, again, is ruled by Mars. Venus, is in detriment. Oops. Oh, man, this is so frustrating when I move that thing. Okay, let's go back to that. So financial, we showed you that Mars and Aries, Aries is the ram, but it's actually one of the most bullish signs for stocks and crypto. Of course, it also rules market confidence, the military and defense sectors, the military industrial complex, very similar to Mars, gun manufacturing, solar power, as the sun is exalted in Aries. Why is the sun exalted in Aries? Because the sun, it's the first sign of spring. The sun is actually literally getting warmer and the light is increasing. And it relates to that kind of upward moving expansion and growth and confidence and risk. Aries is a sign that is a risk taker. And markets are, stocks and crypto are considered risk on, markets. Yes, Aries is a sign of incredibly strong vitality and confidence for markets. Some of you might remember that long 6-month period of Mars in Aries. It was an incredibly powerful rally for the markets during the pandemic in 2020. So people with a lot of Aries placements, they might have a high risk tolerance for trading and investing. Jupiter in Aries was also very favorable for stocks and crypto. Wealth planet Venus is debilitated in Aries. Venus in Aries square that Saturn-Pluto conjunction did trigger the dramatic 4 or 5 week market crash in February and March of 2020. Taurus, of course, is the bull. When we talk about bullish, Taurus is the ultimate wealth sign. Taurus is a sign that is associated with gains, prosperity, holding on to things. Let me move my thing here. Holding on, Taurus likes to accumulate, accumulates wealth, profits, increase, livestock, cattle, grains. Of course, it rules banking and money. Also, in addition to Cancer and the moon, it rules real estate, like physical things, physical actual property, real estate investments, real investments. It's a sign of, fertility and wealth. The bull has been associated with wealth, for millennia. And of course, it's ruled by Venus, which likes comfort and luxury and the good things in life. And the moon is exalted there too. The moon loves beautiful things and accumulates wealth. And we've seen, with Uranus and Taurus, we've seen, a huge financial revolution in cryptocurrencies, especially since the final ingress, which was in 2019. And so we're seeing a lot of changes in how money works with Uranus and Taurus, right? We're seeing a lot less use of cash, and even credit cards, a lot more digital payments, whether it's cryptocurrencies, PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, whatever it is. It's a lot faster, digital money. Gemini, is an important sign in financial, has a lot of financial implications. It rules information technology. Uranus and Gemini is going to be revolutionary for information technology. We may see self-driving cars. Smartphones are going to be even more powerful computer technologies. We might see quantum computing. I mean, Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius, we're going to see some massive technological breakthroughs. Of course, traditional and social media. Some of you may remember when Mars spent that long, what was it, like 6 months in Gemini, Elon Musk was trying to take over Twitter, and there was a lot of battles around his takeover of Twitter, ruled by Gemini social media. Former President Trump, he's got the Sun conjunct Uranus and the North Node in Gemini. President Trump was the first really politician, especially president, that figured out how to use Twitter and social media to get his message across, to get his branding and promotion across. Whatever your feelings about him, he was an absolutely genius at using social media. This is his sun, Uranus, and Gemini. And of course, it rules on news events and travel. Now, Gemini is very fickle. Gemini is the most fickle sign. It's a very nervous, jumpy sign. So Jupiter in Gemini, you know, we've seen some jumpy market conditions. Mercury in Gemini, anything the moon in Gemini, the market can be very nervous and fickle, changing a lot. Sentiment can change very quickly. So Jupiter in Gemini is good, I think, for, you know, for social media. You know, Meta, especially, I think Meta's been doing very well with Jupiter and Gemini. Apple's been doing very well with Jupiter and Gemini, phone sales. Yeah, trying to think of some other things that have come out with Jupiter and Gemini, but let's keep going here. So, okay, Cancer, the crab rules homes, land, and real estate, rules silver. People with very strong placements, like the moon in Cancer, the North Node in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, they may have they may make a lot of money through real estate investments. Maybe stocks or crypto is not their thing. You know, rules food, the restaurant business, rules businesses related to childcare, rules businesses related to counseling and therapy. Leo, the sign of the lion, and Leo, you know, represents the king's politics. Let me get to the financial implications here. So Leo has an association with gold based on the sun. Now, Leo is the sign of risk, gambling, trading, and speculation. Leo loves to play the markets. Leo loves to take risk. Leo is a quintessentially a trader sign. And it just has a taste for risk. Of course, it's going to be ruling solar power a lot here. And it rules Hollywood and movies and entertainment, and rules kings and heads of states and political intrigue and so forth and so on. So we use that example of the roaring 20s, the 10-year-long, decade-long stock market boom, Neptune in Leo. Maybe there was a little bit of fantasy, overhyped valuations in the markets, and that all came crashing down when Neptune moved into Virgo. That's one of my great examples of the difference between Leo and Virgo. We don't have any major outer planet activity right now in Leo. Virgo, you know, Virgo's the opposite, very much the opposite. It's a very conservative, practical sign. It doesn't like to gamble or take a lot of risk. Rules agriculture, the harvest. It rules the business of healthcare and nursing and medicine. So biotech could do well, certain placements in Virgo. You know, notice that both wealth planets, Venus and Jupiter, are debilitated in Virgo. Although Venus, I think, does have some triplicity rulership. It's not I mean, it's an earthy, practical sign, so it does like, you know, material success through hard work. It's not particularly a wealth-oriented sign. I mean, Virgo likes to work behind the scenes and service for the greater good. And wealth, you know, similar to Saturn in some ways, Virgo likes that wealth that comes from hard work over time and being very practical and not taking a lot of big risks. Of course, it also rules like the arts and craftsmanship. Fine craftsmanship is ruled by Virgo. So money that comes from very, very fine craftsmanship. But it's not a great sign just for the markets in general. It's a kind of a lower, you know, confidence sign coming after the high confidence sign of Leo. Libra, you know, rules the art market. Of course, it's a love sign. It rules like relationships and marriage. It rules the business of weddings and marriage, which is a very lucrative business. It rules the art market. Arts as an investment. It rules NFTs in the cryptocurrency markets, which are a form of digital art. It rules art as an investment. It rules the businesses of beauty and spas and salons. And also like jewelry and fashion. It rules the law. It rules all business partnerships and like accounting. And Venus has dignity here, so there's wealth potential with Venus in Libra. I'm going to go a little bit quicker here. Scorpio, Scorpio can rule gold and silver metals, diamonds, and gems that are buried into the earth, but it's opposite the sign of Taurus. Taurus is a sign of gains. Scorpio is actually considered a sign of loss. Scorpio is letting go, but Scorpio is a sign of loss. The eighth house can be a house of loss, the eighth sign. Scorpio represents losses. It also represents the business of organized crime, inheritances, money that comes from a death or loss, taxes, debt, other people's money. Scorpio does have a talent for using other people's money to make wealth. So borrowing money to buy a house, borrowing money sometimes can be a smart investment, as long as the risk is managed properly. But Scorpio is not, Venus is debilitated in Scorpio. It's not inherently a wealth sign. Of course, it could depend on the placements. If you had Jupiter in Scorpio that was trine, Venus in Pisces, that would not necessarily be bad. It really depends on various factors. Sagittarius, of course, is kind of a wealth sign. It's a sign of optimism and luck. It likes risk. The fire signs in general like to take risks. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Their confidence, they bring confidence to the markets. They bring confidence to our natal charts. They bring a sense of a higher risk tolerance and a little bit of a gamble or speculation. Jupiter, of course, has dignity in Sagittarius, and it's a very favorable, lucky wealth placement, optimism, prosperity, expansion, good fortune. It could be a little overconfident. Jupiter in Sagittarius can overpromise and underdeliver. Sagittarius isn't always good. It can represent wasting of resources, overconfidence with our resources, mismanaging spreading resources out too thinly and ending up overexposed. So it's not all fun and games, but generally speaking, Sagittarius is kind of happy-go-lucky. It does rule international travel. A great example of this was during the pandemic. You might remember, well, the North Node went into Gemini and the South Node went into Sagittarius for a year and a half. There was almost zero international travel during the South Node in Sagittarius. International travel was really shut down. So that's very interesting. It shows you how difficult, problematic the South Node can be for the sectors that are ruled by that sign. Right now we see South Node's in Libra. Diplomacy and negotiation are completely disabled with a lot of wars raging around the world and really zero effective negotiation and diplomacy going on. Capricorn, of course, is a very important financial sign. It is a wealth sign. It's a ruler of business and commerce and financial markets. It's business savvy. It's good at buying and selling and managing money. It has an innate awareness of how to work with money and markets. It's very, very practical. Capricorn is a sign of great ambition, great accomplishments, wealth through hard work and smart long-term investments, not through luck or speculation like Sagittarius. It rules construction and building, corporate, and government power, government regulations of the markets also. It's associated with efficiency, ambition, hard work, and productivity. Aquarius rules high tech, right? The modern rulership is Uranus. The traditional ruler is Saturn. It rules high tech. Aquarius is the best sign for cryptocurrencies. Imagine that. Venus in Aquarius has been one of the most reliable placements for cryptocurrencies to do well. Jupiter in Aquarius was a fantastic rally for cryptocurrencies. Crypto loves Aquarius. Aquarius loves crypto. Futuristic technologies. Pluto in Aquarius. Man, you're going to get sick of hearing about AIs. And the technology is going to change so fast over the next 20 years. It's going to be super hard to keep up. Some of my investment ideas, not financial advice, just ideas to consider. quantum computing, of course, AI boom is going to continue with Pluto and Aquarius. Nuclear technology, actually, because the AI is going to be using so much electricity. The big AI guys like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, they want to keep their carbon footprint down. So they're investing big in nuclear. So you might want to consider some exposure to nuclear investments. Pluto and Aquarius should be favorable for cryptocurrencies. Of course, it's a 20-year long period, so there's going to be ups and downs and changes in the markets. Of course, we're also going to see the downside of, is AI going to destroy humanity? Well, we're going to find out probably with Pluto and Aquarius. Last but not least, we've got Pisces. Pisces rules, crude oil and water resources and the oceans. It's not a wealth sign. Pisces doesn't really care about material wealth. Pisces is looking for like spiritual transcendence of the material world. Jupiter in Pisces was terrible for financial markets in 2022. It was one of the worst years for markets. Yeah, it's kind of a renunciation of wealth in the pursuit of the spiritual or the divine. But again, sometimes it brings a sort of wealth through divine blessing. And it rules the business of like music and poetry and dance. And Pisces also rules Hollywood, make-believe and magic and sci-fi and fantasy and stuff like that also. That's pretty much it. We made it through all the planets and all the signs, and we have a little bit of time left over here. So we could now have a bit of a discussion, questions and comments and so forth like that. Sorry, I did race through the signs a little bit faster.
And you are going to make them available to participants, correct? People have been asking about that, so we'll get those sent out to you.
Or, well, Kepler is. I'll make them available to Kepler, and Kepler will make them available to whoever would like to check those out. And also, you can purchase my full course that goes through all the signs, planets, houses, aspects, major historical market cycles, and I have a full introductory course that's 15 hours of instruction on financial astrology. And I use show all the techniques that I use, including progressions and transits and natal charts for IPOs and for cryptocurrency natal inception charts, and we go over all the techniques that we use.
Great. And to the point of inception charts, a few people are asking in the Q&A, how do you determine the dates and times you use for different stocks, cryptos?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to do the research. I mean, I have a research assistant. I don't always do it all myself, but yeah, I mean, you can generally speaking find the date of an IPO chart. I mean, do you use the incorporation date? Do you use the IPO chart? You have to sort of do some research. Most, I think, people use the IPO chart for track the stock price. And, sometimes now getting the exact time is not always easy. If you're doing it in real time, you can see when the first live trade actually hits the market. For an example, Coinbase, I think, hit the market at like 1:35 p.m. when we did that IPO. We were tracking it live. But if you're going back to like the NVIDIA thing goes all the way back to the 1990s. I mean, the famous astrologer Bill Meridian, I think he says to use just the 9:30 market open time for the ascendant. So there's some debate. Again, like a lot of astrology, there's no absolute truth as to which is the best thing to use. It's kind of up to you. For cryptocurrency, it's a little bit, you have to be able to track we use the, like for Bitcoin, we use the Genesis block chart. We can even take a look at that chart, real quick here. And I'll just use that as an example, because that's a lot of my work is based on the Bitcoin. And I'm using the Luna astrology software here, which is a nice cloud software. It doesn't have the full everything of like Astro Gold or Solar Fire, but it's a nice sort of easy accessible cloud software. If you use the code Damus, you'll get a discount on this software. This is the Bitcoin inception chart. We're lucky because the Genesis block for Bitcoin was time stamped for January 3rd, 2009 at 6:15 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. We don't know the location, but I've rectified it to London. We'll never know for sure, but this seems to be very accurate and predictive. It's time stamped on the Genesis block. So we use the Genesis block of the blockchain. Same for Ethereum, same for Solana. Those ones I don't give out. They're proprietary, but you can do your own research on the web. And they're all a blockchain explorer. You can locate the exact time. Location is often a lot harder to find, because where is it? You know, where is it something that's created online located? But the Bitcoin chart is very interesting. You know, it has a stellium of Mars, Pluto, and the Sun. This is the, you know, I've always said the Bitcoin chart is the Terminator. This is just a fiercely competitive, you know, Mars exalted in a night chart, conjunct Pluto, conjunct the Sun. This is a fiercely unstoppable thing. And when I saw that, I knew right away that this thing was going to dominate the global financial markets over the next decade. So sometimes just looking at a natal chart, boom, you'll get an insight like that. And I started immediately putting money into Bitcoin back in 2017 as soon as I saw the natal chart. I said, this thing cannot be stopped. Nothing can stop Mars, Pluto, Sun, and Capricorn in a night chart. Mars exalted in a night chart in with Pluto and the Sun. It can be slowed down, it can be temporarily halted, but nothing can stop this thing. It's got Venus exalted also in a night chart, which is nice. It's Jupiter's not that good. It's in fall and anaretic, and it's out of sect. It's Jupiter's a bit weak, but it's a Leo rising, which is also, you know, quite strong. So I think the Bitcoin natal chart is quite a great example of a very, very strong inception chart for an asset. We can look at another one here. I'm gonna throw up. Let me see. Actually, is there any more questions while we do this?
I mean, there's several. Some of them
sure.
are more pertinent than others.
Okay.
But
Well, you
let's
can
look at
pick.
another chart. Might answer the questions as you analyze
Okay,
the
let's
chart.
just look at another chart real quick here. I'm going to throw up the NVIDIA chart, which of course is the AI leader. It's been driving the stock market rally all year. And this is probably the most important company in the world right now. It's outperformed Bitcoin. It's outperformed every other company on the stock market. It's a $2 or $3 trillion company now. And, you know, this is interesting. I mean, it's got 4 planets in Aquarius, the sign of cutting edge new technology, the sign that's most associated with AI. So it's an interesting chart. It's got actually Jupiter exalted in Pisces. You know, I mean, it's got the AC, right? The ascendant is in Pisces. So the AC Lord is Jupiter, you know, with dignity, conjunct the ascendant, using the 9:30 a.m. market open for this chart. This is a very powerful chart as well. So it's got the Sun conjunct Uranus in Aquarius, I think, which is very good for a cutting edge new technology chart. It's got the Sun conjunct Neptune, which is interesting. I wouldn't ordinarily think of that as being super favorable, but and that's going to get transited by Pluto. So this is very interesting. Also, Venus is on the south node. I also wouldn't have not necessarily thought that would have been favorable. You know, so sometimes things are more complex than the theory would allow for, but. And maybe this isn't the correct time, you know, because I don't know. It was back in, you know, the chart for this is January 22nd, 1999, of course, New York Stock Exchange. And I think, yeah, 9:30 a.m. market open. But it has Pluto trine the moon. That's a favorable. It has Venus sextile Saturn. It has Venus trine Mars. So there's, you know, there's some good favorables here. So anyway, that's just another example of using an IPO chart.
Great, thank you. And some people are wondering about asteroids. Do you use
Oh,
asteroids in your
interesting.
analysis?
I don't actually use them, but I do. I use Vesta because I've studied a bit with Christine Skinner. She's my favorite financial astrologer, and she's my personal astrologer. I do consults with her. If you don't know who she is, she's a legendary financial astrologer in the UK. She's written numerous books on financial astrology, lectures, and teaches all over the world on financial astrology, over 40 years experience. And she says Vesta is the trader's asteroid. So I always have Vesta. If you see my charts on my Luna, not on my astro.com, but on my Luna, I always have Vesta. Just because I like to track it, I like to keep track of what it's doing. If we just look at what it's doing now, go to today's chart, you'll see it just hit 26, and it's making a lovely a trine to Uranus and the moon today as we do this seminar. But I think Vesta trining Uranus is somehow mitigating algol a bit. So I pretty much I use Chiron and Vesta, and I use Chiron more for medical astrology. But like we just had a full moon conjunct Chiron. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but that was pretty heavy. I felt that, you know, so yeah, I use Chiron and Vesta. I mean, how many points can you keep track of? You know, when you get into start using asteroids and fixed stars, and it's like, you know, at some point it just becomes too much information. So
Have
everybody
you,
has to
this
determine
person's,
for
if you've
themselves, like how much
integrated,
information can I use?
have you integrated astrocartography into with financial astrology to
No, not at all. I mean, I use it
remediate
just for like,
planetary?
where's a good place for people to live? Where's a good place to go travel? That kind of thing. I haven't used it for financial at all, personally.
Mhm. And someone else asked, sort of in that vein, have you experimented with astrological remediation, maybe for wealth blocks in the chart or debilities,
Not
financial
too
debilities?
much, not too much. I mean, I'm not really an astro magic guy. I mean, I think I'm not well versed and trained in astro magic and talismans and remediation. It's something I'd like to know more about. I mean, you have to go to people who are really good at that, right? Like Austin Coppock and what's her name down in LA? That Hellenistic astrologer. I'm just drawing a blank on her name right now. She's very good at astro magic. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that stuff can work. I'm just personally not that knowledgeable about it. I mean, I think there's like certain mantras you can do and wealth practices you can do. Like, for example, I do recommend to my clients. Let's say that's a good question, actually. Let's say someone has, you know, Saturn a partile opposing their natal Jupiter, right? So that's going to impose some kind of limitations on their ability to generate prosperity and have confidence in themselves. And so I would recommend, hey, maybe do once a month, do Lakshmi practice, right? That's just like a very common, especially in Vedic or yoga or Indian Hinduism, it's a prosperity practice. You can make prayers to Lakshmi and chant the Lakshmi mantra and make offerings to Lakshmi. And that can help to open up blockages, you know. So that's just one example of what you could do. Making a practice of generosity, giving to the poor and you know, whatever your favorite charities are, that can actually help increase your good karma, of course. Yeah, I mean, certainly, like if you go to a reputable astro magic practitioner, you could get a prosperity talisman that could help with your natal chart. Or Vedic astrology, you could get the correct gemstone to help open up some problem in your chart as well. I think those are all valid things. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. And some people are asking about the upcoming Saturn-Neptune conjunction with the North Node. What are your feelings on that and the markets?
Well, certainly, I mean, Saturn and Neptune are going to go into Aries, and they're going to get within about 15 minutes of a degree in 2025. And yeah, I mean, the 0 to 1 Aries is the world axis point. And they're going to make an exact conjunction at 0 Aries in 2026. And I'm very concerned about that. I think a lot of astrologers are looking to that as a potential, the next really major crisis point. You know, it's also associated with big upheaval and political unrest in Russian politics. And so that's something that we're keeping an eye on. That's something we should be looking at. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely the next big concern. We've got Saturn, Uranus, well, now Pluto on November 19th going into Aquarius. And then we have well, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are all going to be changing signs over the next 2 years. That's an enormous amount of shift. It's going to be extremely chaotic. Yeah, I mean, I think especially for cryptocurrency markets, I don't like Saturn or Neptune. I especially don't like Saturn in Aries, right? Because if we go back to this Bitcoin chart here, for Bitcoin, I've been thinking about this specifically because a lot of my work is forecasting Bitcoin, market trends. You can check out my subscription service on Patreon for that stuff. But since somebody did ask about this specifically, I'll sort of show you, this is the Bitcoin natal chart. I'm going to throw up the inceptions, the transits here, and we're going to go ahead to 2026. Although let's go back a few months. So, just looking at the Bitcoin natal chart, I'll show you something real quick here. In January, I actually like this. In January, you're going to get, let me see, where's our Jupiter? Jupiter, okay. So let me just refine this here. So Jupiter's going to go to, okay, let's see, it's going retrograde. So in early January, Jupiter over here is going to hit 19, whoops. Jupiter's going to hit 19 Cancer, and it's going to make a trine to the Bitcoin Uranus at 19 Pisces. Well, that's the same trine that it made in the 2013 all-time high. So I think that could be quite good for Bitcoin there. But then Saturn and Neptune go into Aries, and look what happens here. They're going to square the stellium. All year, Saturn is going to square the stellium here. Let me go month by month. Saturn, boom, it's going to go into Aries, and it's going to square the Bitcoin's natal Pluto, Mars, and Sun. And it's going to square Bitcoin Pluto once, Bitcoin Mars once. It's going to square the Bitcoin Sun 3 times. I don't know if you can see my screen here, but yeah, right here. So Saturn in Aries, it's going to square this Bitcoin stellium throughout 2026. And so we're very concerned about that. The data on those Saturn hard aspects is very bad. It's very bearish. The wipeout years for Bitcoin were 2014, 2018, 2022, and 2026 falls into the 4-year Bitcoin cycle as a potential wipeout year. The astrology suggests it can happen. Of course, you've also got Neptune is going to be squaring that stellium there. So Bitcoin could lose a lot of its luster in 2026. That also makes sense. Why does that also make sense? Because the Bitcoin tops have historically come about 18 months after the halving. The halving was in April of 2024. 18 months after puts us into Q4 2025. Okay, so if we get the high comes in late 2025 or January 2026, then we could see another one of those big, famous, infamous 80-90% wipeout years for Bitcoin. But still, the long-term trajectory always continues to be up. So that would probably most likely be a buying opportunity. But coming back to that Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February, there could be some type of crisis that shakes the markets. So yeah, your questioner is right to highlight that as really the next major. Now, will we see a major crisis on the initial ingress in 2025? Uranus initial ingress into Aries the first couple of times didn't do anything. I mean, I won't say it didn't do anything. You did get some things, I think, like with the Arab Spring, but when Uranus made the final ingress to 0 Aries that day, you got the tsunami in Japan and the Fukushima disaster. So like the final ingress is often where you get the really, really big crisis events. So I'm really looking at November 19th of Pluto's final ingress into Aquarius for some major activity. So will the Saturn-Neptune conjunction activate in 2025, or will we have to wait till February 2026? We don't really know the answer. But you have to be cautious going into that in 2026. And it doesn't look good for Bitcoin, and that could also be correlating with the stock market too. Stock market's been up since October 2022, bottom, and how long is that going to continue? We just have to see. I know, yeah, let's take some more questions. Let's take one or two more questions and then we can wrap it up.
Sure. People are wondering about what software you use for trading.
Like, what do you mean? I mean, crypto software, like what kind of, I mean, there's TradingView, which is like how you sort of track the markets. Let's show you that. I mean, so you've got like most traders are using TradingView. So here's the Bitcoin price chart on TradingView. This is the daily price action. It's just really had a big breakout rally. For actual placing trades, I mean, you have to have an account on a cryptocurrency exchange or an investment, bank like Fidelity or Schwab or something like that. For cryptocurrencies, you could use Coinbase or Gemini or Binance, which are the big exchanges in the United States. I mean, so for actually placing trades or investments, now Bitcoin you can buy in the stock market. There's ETFs for Bitcoin. You don't have to go through a cryptocurrency exchange anymore. There's here's IBIT. This is the Bitcoin Trust. I think this is one of them. There's let me see. There's also FBTC, which is Fidelity's Bitcoin Trust. Fidelity or Origin Bitcoin Trust. There's BITX. This is a 2x Bitcoin. This is a leveraged Bitcoin trade on the stock market. So there's lots of different ways to trade a Bitcoin now. It used to be you just had to have a cryptocurrency account exchange, but now you can actually do it just through a regular stock market investment account and buy the ETF. There's like an ETF for everything now, right? You can buy a nuclear ETF, a Bitcoin ETF, an Ethereum ETF, a gold ETF, whatever. There's an ETF for everything. But for
Another
like
person
trading,
asks,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Another person asks about contacts between an IPO's chart and a natal chart. Do you look at that at all when you're considering investment?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, for example, the Bitcoin, let's go back to the Bitcoin chart. The thing is that, you're not marrying that asset. So it's not really synastry. You shouldn't get too attached to the synastry of it. Let's remove the trend. Just as an example that is interesting. I mean, I'm pretty much, let's say, one of its leading financial astrologers for Bitcoin. Well, it just so happens my sun is at 8 Aquarius, my midheaven is 8 Aquarius, and my Mercury is 10 Aquarius. Well, the Bitcoin's north node just happens to be at 8, depending on whether you use the true or the mean, at 9 Aquarius. Bitcoin's north node is on my natal Sun, Mercury, and midheaven, and my job is analyzing, Bitcoin market trends. So, that's pretty interesting. I'm trying to think if I have something else like that. My Jupiter, yeah. I mean, I don't get too hung up about that. I mean, I think that stuff is sometimes interesting or useful. I mean, but I don't really pay that much attention. I don't pay that much attention to it. But I mean, it can be used sometimes. For example, I mean, there could be times when you would use that. Let's say, yeah, I mean, so for example, when Venus goes into Aquarius, it's usually good for crypto. Well, it hits Bitcoin's north node and my sun. So that's information I can use. That's probably a good short-term long trade that I could make money on just on that Venus transit. So it's interacting with my chart and it's interacting. Venus in Aquarius is generally good for crypto. It's specifically good for Bitcoin when it hits the North Node. It's specifically good for me when it hits my Sun Mercury conjunction. So you could use that information to actually place a trade. Yeah. So if you had, let's just say you had your sun was at, let's say your sun was at 13 degrees Taurus. Well, your sun would be trying the Bitcoin sun. And so if something hit, let's just say Venus hit 13 Virgo. Well, that would trine your sun and the Bitcoin sun. That would probably be a good day to place a trade. Well, a few days before that happens, you bet long. Bitcoin goes up when that hits, and then you close out the trade and lock in some money. So you could use those. You could use those synastry aspects like that. Takes a lot of energy and time to map all that stuff out, though. But especially if it was an outer planet transit, that could be obviously like if you know, okay, Jupiter's, or let's say Uranus is going to trine my Venus at the same time it's trining the Bitcoin sun. Again, that's useful information for a trader to use. And conversely, if the South Node is going to hit your natal Jupiter at the same time it's hitting something in the Bitcoin chart, you would know to probably take risk off the table and protect your profits.
And those are all very good advice. I would also ask this other person's question about short-term investments in the next few months and the Mars-Pluto opposition. I'm kind of wrapping those two together. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. I'm not really going to you would have to really subscribe to my personal subscription service. I'm not going to give any financial advice here on the markets right now. I am concerned about that Mars opposition to Pluto, especially for Bitcoin. I do think that could be a very sharp short-term pullback. So I will say that, because it's opposing Bitcoin's natal Jupiter and progressed sun. And Mars transits, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Mars transits are really slowing down. So Mars transits are taking 3 to 4 days now instead of 1 or 2. So that could be good. It could also be bad. I'm bullish going into this Mars Uranus sextile. I think it's going to be I think next week could be very good for the markets around that aspect. Mars opposing Pluto, of course, there's a lot of the overall macroeconomic situation is good. The labor market is holding up. Inflation is coming down. The Fed has cut rates, adding liquidity to the markets. There's no sign of a recession. And the stock market just made the 11th green week out of the 10th green week out of 11. The overall market environment is very bullish right now. And I'm bullish through the end of the year. We'll reassess in 2025, but the big risk that is hanging over the market is the Middle East geopolitics. Bitcoin and crypto took a huge dump when Iran attacked Israel. Now we're waiting for Israel to retaliate, and this can have a big effect on the market. The markets, haven't seemed to care very much about, just to be honest, as an observational fact about the war in Gaza with Hamas and the war in Lebanon with Hezbollah. But when Israel and Iran go toe-to-toe, the market gets very nervous because there's a fear of the big regional powers and a much more escalated war. And the market has gotten very nervous when those events take place. So we do have to be a bit cautious for Israel's counter retaliation against Iran, and that could shake up the markets for a couple of days or a week or two, depending on what Israel does. And that certainly could fall on the Mars opposition to Pluto. It's also within a day or two of the US presidential elections, and there's some uncertainty around that. So, there are some risks. The overall macro and market situation is quite bullish, but there are short-term risk uncertainties. We just have to see how that plays out. Mars, Pluto, yeah, that's a war aspect. That's an aspect of absolutely brutal and aggressive force. And unfortunately, while we're praying for peace, there could be some really terrible developments. So, yeah, there could be a short-term pullback, but I would see that as a buying opportunity. Unfortunately, I mean, we know people are dying. I don't want to make light of that, but just the reality is any pullbacks right now would likely be a buying opportunity for stocks and crypto going into the end of the year. Now Mars and Mercury retro overlap in December for like 10 days. I mean, those are usually quite difficult, right? So there's always going to be some risk. There's always going to be some uncertainty. But I think things look okay for the markets going into the sort of Santa rally. Typically December is bullish for the markets unless it's a terrible bear market year. So I'm relatively optimistic for the next few months, the
Great.
next 10 weeks.
Thank you so much, Robert. This has been really illuminating. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to answer so many questions. We've popped your links to your website and your Twitter X and YouTube channel into the chat box, and I encourage everyone to follow up there. Some people have expressed interest in your Patreon program, and if the top tier, if you offer one-on-one mentoring, monthly tutoring.
Yeah, we have a private tutorial level for people who really want to study financial astrology techniques at a more advanced level. Just the regular $25 level, we give a lot of I'm always going over the weekly, monthly factors, and got about 425 subscribers on there right now. And it's mainly focused around Bitcoin. We do cover about 15 to 20 stocks. We just gave recommendations on quantum computing and nuclear sectors. We cover altcoins. We cover about 5 to 10 altcoins. We cover 15 to 20 stocks. The main focus is the overall Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market trends. We talk about general astrology, factors as well as the market dynamics too. So I think people interested in learning financial astrology would find my Patreon very interesting. A lot of super in-depth stuff. It's really my passion, and I do 1 to 2 times a week. Pretty long, in-depth, detailed market analysis. This has been great. I want to thank KeplerCollege for inviting me. It's been a real honor to work with you guys. The first time I've ever done anything for Kepler, and it's really fantastic. I mean, my mission in life is to get people interested and passionate and inspired about astrology, and it's great to partner up with great institutions like KeplerCollege, and hopefully that stuff was all informative and useful for you guys. And that was just the tip of the iceberg, really, for financial astrology, but hopefully it was a good introduction.
It was fantastic. You're getting a lot of love in the chat. People are very appreciative of it. So thank you for spending time with us today.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a great weekend.
Okay.
And you
Thanks,
guys
everyone.
hosting. And hopefully I'll be invited back to do more.
Absolutely. There's more things being planned in the works. So I encourage everyone to stay tuned for that.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Bye.